Hello. How are you doing? It's Richard here. Let me put myself on screen. It's Richard here. Hey, welcome back to the Scale Up Leader. Today we're talking about. Oops, I just removed my thing. There it is. Are you on track? Mid-quarter OKRs reviews. If you're watching this as a replay, hi, great to see you. If you're listening to this on a podcast, just audio, there is video as well, but you don't need to look at the video to understand what's happening here. Just feel free to listen along. If you have questions whether you're live or again, add to stream. There we go. Whether you're live or if you're watching later on, just post the question in the LinkedIn and YouTube. You can post comments and questions. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear who you are, what you're doing, and whether you have any questions or comments or things you'd like to cover. If you're here, I'd love to hear if you say hi, Michael, how you doing? But say hi, drop a note in. All right, let's get started with this. I'll bring up my screen like so. Nope, like so. Can I do this? Is it going to work? No, it's not going to work. There we go. There it is. Right. And what we're going to do is talk about OKR mid-quarter reviews. Now, why are we talking about that now? Because it's the 6th of May right now, and it's pretty much mid-quarter. Like, we're not quite at mid-quarter yet. Mid-quarter is coming up in the next, next couple of weeks. But you need to be prepared for that. You need to be ready for the mid-quarter, and that's so that we can we are all ready to go. Just pull my presenter display up over here. So we're talking about the mid-quarter OKR review. What are we doing now? Why we're doing this mid-quarter OKR review? Because, oh goodness me, I think that I'm talking way too fast, so I'm going to have to slow myself down. We're talking about the mid-quarter OKR review. We do a mid-quarter review because basically this is the last call. This is when you have the opportunity to make a change to how you're doing things and get things done before the end of quarter. Now, often enough, the end of quarter is not necessarily a critical moment. Like, it's not fundamentally critical, but if you're wanting to get things to happen, you have to create a cadence, you have to create a rhythm. And the halfway through the quarter is a great time to stop and say, how are we doing this quarter, and what are we going to change, and how are we progressing for the quarter? How are we going to make sure that we deliver things, right? So why are we doing this? Why are we doing the mid-quarter review? It's not to get scores. We're not trying to score ourselves. It's not to make people sweat and make people worry about everything. It's not to predict results even. We don't necessarily need to worry about predicting the results, except insofar as that helps us to make changes. That's what we're doing. It's our last chance to make a change to what we're doing and how we're doing it, and how we're driving our progress this quarter. It's our last chance, because basically if we don't do something at some stage about halfway through the quarter, most of the quarter's gone, and we may as well not change it. We may as well worry about the next quarter instead of this quarter. Why are we making change? So we can deliver results. That's the purpose of everything we're doing with OKRs. We're trying to deliver results. And just to, and this is the next slide is something that's going to come up repeatedly. What are we doing when we're doing this? We're thinking about our plans. We have a plan that's going to help us deliver the results. So we focus primarily on the plan itself. So the questions you want to ask in a mid-quarter review, this is not your agenda, but this is the questions, the purpose of the review, how you run the review. You want to figure out, are you on track? This is often the thing that comes up most of all. Are we on track for the quarter? Are we on track? Are we going in the right direction? And the way to deal with this is to talk about, what's the status? What's the status of the objective? What's my confidence of that status, and what's the plan? What's the status? And specifically with the status, by the way, if you're using OKRs the way I like to use them, your objective is not something you can really have a meaningful status on. It's something that's quite subjective and quite inspirational. And we're trying to we want to, for example, one of my clients has to grow the UK as an objective. Now, what's your status on to grow the UK? It's very hard to assess that, but they have key results, and their key results are numerical, or they have customer-facing milestones that they can talk about very, very clearly. So what we're talking about is the status of those key results and how they go towards delivering our objective. So your status of the key results, the confidence, how confident are you of getting to them at the end, of actually meeting what you said you would do, and what's your plan for attack? Now, when I talk about status, sometimes people get really worried about, how do I even assess the status? Well, the thing is that the key results should be easy to assess. They should be a number or a milestone that's pretty obvious. Maybe it's got it's to launch to enable people to be able to buy your products in Europe, or in Germany, or in French language, or something like that, or to be able to pay in euros or pay with PayPal or whatever it is. Sometimes it's a number and it's increasing this number from this to this, and maybe it's the conversion rate. Maybe it's the increasing conversion rate from 10% to 12% might be a key result, or it might be retention rate, or hiring 7 people. How many people have we hired? How many people do we have? These key results, the point with this is that they should be easy to assess. Now, if they're not easy to assess, you've got a learning to have here, right? You've learned, okay, I've written this key result. I've written something down that said this is what I'm doing, but it's really hard for me to assess. What that means is that it's going to be really hard to figure out what to do. So that means your key result is not expressing what you want to express. So you have to have, if you figured out when you write your key result, you've got something that's like improve implement. One common one that I've seen people do is like implement best practices in sales operations, right? And how are we doing on this? And how do we even assess how we're doing on this? What this means, if we can't assess how we're doing on this, how far up the best practice chart are we? Do we even have a chart? Like what does it mean? What does implement mean, for example, right? If we can't assess how we're doing on this, then we don't know how to plan it. We don't know how to get this thing done, and it doesn't make much difference to us. So it's not a great key result. However, that happens sometimes, and you need to go on with things. So the purpose of what you're trying to do here is, even if you don't have a great key result, try and have a good conversation. Try and have a good discussion about where you are, what your status, what your confidence, and what your plan is. Even if the key result's a bit fuzzy, don't get bogged down in debating the key result unless you really, really need to. By the way, I've got some work in the background. I hope that you can hear me and I'm not getting a lot of buzzing in the background, but I'm getting a lot of buzzing in my background here because I've got some workers downstairs. But the goal here is to have a good conversation, so drive the good conversation. And what you're trying to do is have a good conversation, start out with the status, the confidence, and the plan, and then discuss the problems and the risks to that plan. Like, what are the problems? What are we trying to achieve here? What's going to stop us? What could go wrong? Right? And this is a interesting topic, problems and risks, because people who what you're really trying to do is drive this collaboration about how do we improve things, and talking about the problems and risks involves some level of honesty. Like, there's never a plan that has we have perfect execution and we have no problems and no risks. In that case, why are we being so unambitious? We should be more ambitious. We should have some problems and risks. What are our dependencies and impediments after we've been executing for a month, a month and a half? We've been executing this plan. Have we discovered any new dependencies or impediments to this plan? Do we need to remove some? Do we need to do we have problems with our dependencies? Do we have risks with our dependencies? And finally, what resources and support do we have and do we need? Do we need to change the resources applied to this? Because at this stage, the purpose of this meeting is really to discuss what can we change. It's all about what can we change. So you're looking at, I need to know what's really happening, where the real problems are, where the real risks are. I need to know not just within my team, this particular group, or this particular plan, but what are the dependencies and other things that might be happening around me? What resources do I need? What support do I need? And what can I change to make this go better? And then sometimes this is about getting you back on track, and sometimes it's about changing to go better, right? And the purpose of this is to have action, right? You're trying to cause actions. The whole purpose of the meeting is to change things, to have action so you can deliver results better. And as I said previously, it's all about that plan. You've got the plan, and you're trying to have the plan to deliver the result, but the purpose is not to discuss the key result itself. You're not really focusing on the objective and the key results. You're focusing on what's the plan, what are we doing going forward, and focusing all your attention and energy on going forward. So what if you're not on track? What do you do if you're not on track? And as I said before, by the way, please feel free to drop a comment or a question in LinkedIn or YouTube. I will get to it towards the end or in a future session. What if you're not on track? Well, what you want to do is not have a conversation that's all about blame and defense and debate and performance assessment, right? That kind of thing is not productive. It's not going to get you to where you want to go. Don't have a discussion about that. And this is where if you end up with a discussion about what's the number and how far from the number are we and what went wrong, you end up with a debate, a blame game, and people being defensive and debating everything. And effectively, it feels like a public performance assessment of that person. Like, I have to sort of defend my performance over the year, and I'm at risk of getting fired or missing out on my bonus or whatever it is that I'm having in this situation. And you don't want to have that discussion. That's not the purpose of this meeting. The purpose is to deliver results. So what you want to do is drive the conversation around decisions. Like, we've discussed our plans. What decisions are we going to make? You want to drive a very collaborative conversations, you get different people's inputs. So if you have a cross-functional team, you have marketing, you have sales, you have product, you have engineering, you have operations, you have finance. You actually don't want to sort of just have a conversation about product and on the product topic with the product person with everyone else present. There's no point in that. You want to engage everyone else in discussing, is this a good plan? Does this help us get to the result? Do we have any ideas? Does everyone understand this plan? I know it's a marketing plan, and I know you're an engineering leader, but I want to hear your perspective on this and your questions. Why do I want to do that? Because I want to engage your brain. If you're in this team because because of your intelligence. So engage the brain in collaborating with everyone else's plans and improving everyone else's plans. And again, it's all about focusing on the goal. How do we get to the goal? And the focus is not on the gap between the result and the goal. It's on the plan to get to the goal. Like, how do we improve this plan? We're getting people to focus on that. So if you're trying to run a good meeting, here's how to run a good meeting. You want to, and what I say here is don't do this. Don't have an agenda that says objective 1, key result 1, key result 2, key result 3, and we have a discussion about each key result. Don't do that. Why? Because that tends to generate blame. That's exactly what you don't want. It tends to create the wrong kind of discussion. You want the conversation about the plans. And I keep bringing up this same slide and this same topic because what you're trying to do here is use the OKR, use the objective and the key result and the current results, the current status, your current confidence of that. Use that to drive a conversation about what are we doing next. And you're not looking at what went wrong with the plan. I mean, unless you have to figure out what the learning is, like where was the gap that we can learn from this? What do we change? But you don't want to be like, well, we're off track. What went wrong? We're off track. What do we do? What's going next? Now, one of the things you can ask in this session, and this is a good thing to do halfway through the quarter, is also ask, is the OKR still valid? Generally, you don't want to spend too much time on this, but if the OKR is not valid, one of the big things to do here is to say, this OKR is not valid, let's stop working on it. There's no point in continuing on. You're halfway through the quarter. It's a good checkpoint to say, we said we were going to do this. We said we're going to enter the European market, for example. But now we've had a massive change, and there's like a pandemic, or there's a new opportunity that's opened up in the US. We need to change our attention to the US, or whatever we're doing. We might need to change something. What I do recommend doing is not rewriting the OKR. Don't spend time rewriting it and having another strategy discussion. Put that off until later, unless you really, really need to. But do think, do I even need to do this or not? If it's not sensible, let's stop doing it and just focus on the other things that we said we would do. If you need to write a new OKR, go ahead and write one, but ideally set that as a separate task to do. Here are things to run that meeting. You want to be asking these kinds of questions. Do our plans help us meet the OKRs? Like, how, the plan that we've written, does it actually help us meet this? How are we going with executing the plan? Like, what's going well, what's going badly? What do we need to change going forward? Hence, what changes do we need to make? What changes do we need to make going forward? And then finally, once we've had this discussion about what changes we need to make, usually we're in a team of managers here, we have a team of leaders. You have other people that need to be involved in this. So how do we communicate these decisions? What are we doing to implement this? You want your meetings to be spent on action, not on just discussion or navel gazing or defense or blame. Action. You want forward-facing action plans about what you're doing next. So focus on this this managing upwards. Sorry, this in terms of like the meeting. Focus on these kinds of questions. What do our plans help us meet the OKRs? How are we going with executing the plan? What changes do we need to make to the plan? And how do we communicate these decisions? Because that's what's going to change what happens going forwards. Now, a lot of what I've talked about here is I've kind of been targeting this at the exec team, the senior leadership, and you were talking about a whole company or whatever now. But often you're a manager, you're a lead of a particular project or a product, or you're within an organization, and you've got to think about managing upwards and across. And what are the keys to managing upwards and across, and how can you use a mid-quarter OKR review to help you manage upwards and across? Now, this is actually kind of simple stuff because it's actually very simple about how you normally do upwards and across management. Firstly, you want no surprises. So clearly, when you're having this meeting, you will discover things, or you're spending some time discussing changes. You're discussing what's happening what's happened. What the current status is. You're probably learning stuff. However, as soon as you've learned the stuff, as soon as you learn what's happened, you want to make sure that your counterparts, your managers, whether they're stakeholders, whether they're colleagues, whether they're dependencies, people who depend on you, whoever they are, they get as little surprise as possible. So as soon as you discover things, you want to go immediately to them and say, we have a problem with this objective or this key result, or with this plan is not working. We're not going to deliver this in time, or we have a problem here. Now, part of that is about, we need to get your support. Part of it is just about, we thought we were going to release the product at this date so you can launch it to the market at that date, marketing or sales. However, it's behind and it's not going to be done until at least 1 month more beyond it. And you want to say that message as early as you can. Now, no matter when, and what it's really about is about communicating, right? It's all about having open lines of communication and opening that communication up as early as you can. Now, no matter what you say, when you say that kind of thing, it's always bad news and it's always going to have a negative response. The point is to be able to bring that bad news as early as you possibly can. So don't have this meeting and then go, oh gosh, we're going to have a problem. How do we fix this problem so that we don't have to tell them? You want to tell them, we have a problem. This is our problem. We've discovered this problem. But then you want to say more than just that. You want to say, what's your this is our progress, this is our current status, this is what the problem is, but here are our plans. Here are the problems we have that we're having that are going on that might be affecting us, that we're anticipating, and here's our requests, right? So what we're doing here is we're saying not just we have a problem, or here is a situation, but we're saying here's what we're doing about it, and here's what we want you to do about it. Like, can you help us with this? Now, often enough, these requests will be requests for adjusting some sort of dependency. They'll be requesting something that is helping you to manage other people's expectations, or make sure that the other plans are changing, so that they're reducing the impact of the problem. But sometimes it will be a request for help. Can you help us? We need more resources. We need more time. We need to reduce the priority of something else. We need to take attention off something to be able to put attention onto this. We need a decision, that kind of thing. But all of that kind of stuff is the stuff that you want to drive from this meeting. So after you've had your mid-quarter review, you then want to go and have a conversation with your stakeholders and make sure, ideally, in many ways, your stakeholders would be in the meeting, because then they see this transparently. But if they're not there, you want to have a conversation with them afterwards and have a discussion about what is going on and how do I understand. So how do I manage your expectations? How do I make sure that you have as little surprise as possible and you have the most ability to change, right? And likewise, if you have dependencies, you should be expecting these kinds of things, for the progress plans, problems, or requests from your dependencies, because they're having their mid-quarter review as well. So if you have dependencies, you should be asking them to do a mid-quarter review and asking them for their requests and problems, and make sure that you get a heads up, and then not bite their head off when they have a problem and they tell you about it, because that's not going to help either. But you should be expecting that and asking for that. So that's the end of that presentation about mid-quarter meetings, mid-quarter OKR reviews. The thing that I would emphasize here is to not make this too much about OKRs. This should be primarily about your plans, about what you're doing and your actions, not about OKRs per se. Now, you'd structure it around OKRs. That agenda is not terrible. It's as long as you focus the conversation around the future plans, not about just what's the status of this OKR. One thing I didn't mention that I probably should have is that when you're having this kind of meeting, everybody coming to the meeting should prepare by knowing what's going to be happening in this meeting, and having their numbers ready, having their numbers so that they know, where are we with every status. I should be able to go through the status and say, hey, everybody, here's the OKR that we're working towards. This is I'm owning this objective or those key results. Here's the objective. This is why we're doing it. Here's the key result. That's our current status. Here's that key result. Here's our current status. And that discussion should be very quick. It should be like 10 minutes, maybe 5 minutes, just to revise what is the OKR, why are we doing it, and what's our current status. Then we spend all of our time on the plans and on that focus around what are we doing, and what's our plan for changing, what changes do we need to make, where are our risks, what resources do we need, and all that sort of stuff. And you have that conversation primarily around that. So if you found this useful, drop a like or a subscribe in, click the bell button wherever you are. Drop a comment in if you have a question, if you have any follow-up questions, or if you think that there's something that I've got wrong. I'd love to hear your ideas about what you think is necessary for mid-quarter reviews, whether they're OKR reviews or some other method that you're using. It doesn't really matter. In many ways, I don't believe that I teach OKRs. I use OKRs as my main the main part of my business. But I don't believe that there's necessarily a unique, this is OKR and that is not OKR. It's all about how you get things done. And realistically, a lot of these things come down to the same basic concepts around leadership and getting things done. So if you're midway through a quarter, how do you go about getting getting action and getting the what's the word? Getting a status review and doing a check and revising your direction with your teams. All right, thanks very much. Lovely to talk to you again. Looking forward to any comments in the future, and feel free to reach out if you would like it to have a discussion about this, about how this might apply to your organization, your team, and your leadership. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.